I'm R.A. Schwartz, along with Eli Horowitz, and welcome to the WNBAinsidr Show. Each week, we cover different topics important to the W. Using X's and O's along with key stats, we bring honest and critical analysis. Peeps, folks, we got something very controversial for this topic, for this episode. So bear with us. We're not going to get into the mud of it, but what we will do is, well, what our topic is, let's just jump right in. Our topic is top 5 current coaches in the WNBA. Eli, you ready for this one?
You know it.
All right. So I'll go first with my list. And I have a cop-out in it, so I'll even give you that one. But here we go. My list. At number 1 is Cheryl Reeve of the Minnesota Lynx. Number 2 of the Phoenix Mercury, Sandy Brondello. Number 3, and this might be a shocker, Curt Miller of the Connecticut Sun. Number 4, Brian Agler of the LA Sparks. And number 5 is going to be a hold spot for the new coaches, for Katie Smith and Nikki Collins. What's your reaction?
I strongly agree with your list.
You strongly...
On many accounts.
All right, let's go through it. Let me hear your list, and then let's get into the thick of it.
For me, number 1, Cheryl Reeve. So we agree on that one, but I think that's pretty universal. Number 2, Brian Agler. Number 3, Sandy Brondello. Number 4, Curt Miller. And number 5, Bill Laimbeer.
So obviously I think something that you're going to be coming at me about is the Brian Agler. You got him at 2. I got him at 4. I'll lay out my thoughts on it currently. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to take anything away from Brian Agler. The man's got 2 titles with 2 different teams, the only head coach to do that. But what I'm looking at is I'm saying Agler's done a lot of greatness, but currently right now, I think Curt Miller's got a step on him. And that's just the person who's right above him. The reason I think Curt Miller has a step on him is just looking at the rosters. I think the Sparks have a much better roster than the Sun. Now, the Sun have been coached very well to the point where they are a competitive team. Now, that's not to take away from the skill set of the Sun. I just think the coaching that the Suns have, without that coaching, their team would be a much bigger drop than, let's say, the Sparks would have if they didn't have the coaching of Brian Agler. Thoughts on that? What's your rebuttal?
I mean, Curt Miller did an excellent job last year, and I thought he deserved Coach of the Year. If I had an official vote, that would have been my vote. But again, that was 1 year. You know, he's been there as head coach for a couple seasons, and I believe he's going to continue to grow that franchise and do a great job. But Agler has 2 titles with 2 different teams. So if you want to say, oh, it's because he has Candace Parker and NECA, I mean, yeah, he does have a very talented roster, but at the same time, he also did it in Seattle with a roster that had talent, but not to the degree of this Sparks team. I also think it's easier said than done to actually get stars to buy in. I mean, Candace Parker hadn't won a title until Brian Agler got there, and now they've been to back-to-back finals. So obviously something he's doing is getting star players who could easily tune out the head coach to not tune out, but instead to buy in. And I just think when you look at the way that team plays defense, you can see the imprint the coaching staff has on the team.
I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, there's points to it. To me, it's just Curt Miller currently, like, all right, in my mind, if Curt Miller has 1 ring to him, has 1 ring in his pocket, let's say, I think Curt Miller, first of all, has had 2 extremely well-coached seasons. These last 2 have cemented him as a top 5 coach in this league. Now, I don't think either of us are arguing about that. We both have him on our list. To me, the uptake from 2 years ago to last year, and then from what I'm going to assume is going to take place in this season, a jump from last season to this season, I got Curt Miller number 3 on my list. I'm curious for you, your positioning on Brondello.
Yeah, I think Sandy is an elite coach in this league. I think her, Brian and Cheryl are like 1, 2, 3, and that's the top tier for me. and she won a title. And I mean, look at last year. I mean, she really, if not for Kurt Miller, you could have given her Coach of the Year, because think about all the injuries from Griner missing time to Taurasi having to sit out more, to somewhat of a very flawed roster, and she got that team, to the Western Conference Finals. Or I guess there's no conferences in the playoffs anymore, but to the semifinals, and they knocked off Connecticut in the playoffs.
True. No, I mean, I think Brondello has done a very underrated job of coaching. I know she every once in a while gets a lot of attention, but she is. I mean, I think she's coached her team, and that's why I had her above Agler and Miller, because she's coached her team to a point where they are. It's almost as if she is a star player on their roster. The effectiveness and the need that the team has to succeed for her. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, she's very good. By all accounts, the players have a lot of respect for her. They love playing for her. They'll run through a brick wall for her. But look, they matched up against LA last year, and yeah, obviously LA had the more talented roster, but still, I mean, I think, LA swept them and was able to kind of double team Griner, and they didn't really have an answer for it. And again, at that point, you're kind of, look, I mean, Agler has one more title than her, and Brondello could change that this year. So I think for me, it's kind of, I look at it as Reeve is the clear one, and then Agler and Brondello are right there in that top tier. So I'm not, if someone wants to put Brondello as, two, like, I'm not going to have a major disagreement with that. I look at it as a top tier there.
I hear that. I guess my bone to pick.
I don't think Kurt Miller belongs in the top tier yet. I think he can get there and has the potential to get there, but I like to see, again, what if Connecticut missed the playoffs this year? Then all of a sudden, he's coached 3 years and had one good year, and you're there already putting him over coaches that have titles. So I think that's a little bit ridiculous and premature.
Okay. All right. Let's debate this though. You got your number 5 versus my number 5, and look, all the respect for Bill. I mean, I took a non-conventional route for my number 5, but why is Bill number 5 on your book? Because in my book, I struggled to put him as number 5. He honestly didn't cross my mind to put him number 5, just because of the way that New York has struggled of recent.
Well, number 5 was tough. Like I said, I thought there was a clear 1, 2, 3. I thought Kurt Miller was, number 4. And, I'm like, okay, let me put it this way. I'm not going to put a first-year coach on my top 5 for me. So that ruled out Nikki Collin, who I think is going to do a great job. Katie Smith, who I think has a lot of potential. I'm just not going to put a first-year coach on the list. So let me clarify that to make it clear. So that kind of ruled them out. Then I'm looking at these more veteran coaches, and it's really tough. I thought about Pokey Chapman, who took Chicago to the finals, and, Chicago really hadn't had any success until she got there. And I think I've liked her move so far in Indiana. Mike Tebow, I thought about, who has always been a successful coach. His teams are always competitive. I might really have put him there at 5 as well. I think Dan Hughes just has a little bit more to prove in Seattle. Fred Williams needs to prove a bit more, so I didn't really have them in my top. Amber Stocks, kind of same thing with Katie Smith and Nikki. I know it's her second year, but I still it's just too soon to tell. It's not a knock on her at all. I'm a big fan of her, and I think she'll do a great job in Chicago, but I think it's just a little too soon. So essentially, for me, it boiled down to Tebow, Chapman, and Lambier as far as veterans who have had a degree of winning in the league. And I think for me, at the end of the day, it's just, Lambier has 3 rings, and I understand it was a long time ago, but I guess I'm just a little bit more a sucker for titles. It's kind of the same reason I put Agler ahead of Miller and ahead of Brondello. I think that's kind of my tiebreaker. I think if anyone wanted to argue for Chapman or Tebow at 5 over Lambier, I wouldn't really argue with them. It's almost a three-way tie in my mind, but I'm going to put the tiebreaker towards championships.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, for me, it's much more so. I think we're both viewing it in slightly altered ways. For me, I will include a first-year coach only because I almost view this the same as making way too early like season award predictions. All right, I'm looking at it as who's the best coach right now. But for these new coaches like Katie and Nikki, and I completely agree about Amber Stocks. For these coaches, I look at it much more so. I have to look one season down the road. If their team is successful, how dependent on them that is that success? And that's kind of how I view a lot of the coaches. And I kind of went down the list similar to you. Dan Hughes, got to prove more to me, right? Bill Lambier, in all honesty, currently, I'm in the mindset of you got to prove more to me also. And that's why, and I've had that mindset for the past 2 years with the Liberty. So moving forward to Vegas on a new team, everything like that, I understand that the team's going to be much more reliant on him for their success, but I don't think necessarily that he has proven enough for me. And looking at these other teams, Pokey Chapman also, she could be in the discussion. Mike with Washington, him also. But I think for me, more than anything, Katie and Nikki's teams are going to rely super heavily on them. And so for me, if I have to look 1 year down the road, I'd say one of them is going to fill in that top 5 spot, as if we were voting for the award for that position at the end of the season.
The thing I'll say this though, the thing with Lambier is a lot of people say, "Oh, his titles were a long time ago," but you have to remember, New York has been the number 1 seed the last 3 seasons in the East, and I understand that they flamed down the playoffs. But you have to remember, like last year, they won in like a one and done situation. Like, it's not the NBA where it's the best of 7 and they're getting swept every year. Or like the Toronto Raptors, where they literally can't win a game year after year against Cleveland. I feel like Lambier has had an elite team the last 3 years, and they've fallen short in the playoffs. But they've been They've been at the top of the league in rebounding and defense. The last 3 years, and I've criticized the offense. I mean, I tweeted that you can't win a title with the 8th ranked offense, and that's why he's 5th for me. You know what I mean? I'm not putting him 1 or 2 or 3, but I think that the defense and rebounding he's established in New York, and the fact that they've been that top seed and finished 3rd last year and had a 10-game winning streak, you have to give him some credit for that. And then you factor in the 3 rings he already has, and I think for me that's why he just, I think that's why I put him over Chapman and Tebow. I think,
but I mean, I'm gonna have to go back at that.
To back it up, he has trophies to back it up.
He's got trophies to back it up, but that Eastern Conference stuff doesn't really hold for me because, I mean, look who's there. Atlanta got to see a championship once, all right? Indiana got to go to the championship once or twice. They won it once, and they're the only other team besides Minnesota and Phoenix and Sparks who have won it at all. I mean, Chicago got a chance at the finals. They couldn't get it done. New York is a team that has perennially been a leader in their conference, but has just flamed out completely in the playoffs. And the Western Conference is dominated. So for me, he's had some success in the regular season, and I might be mistaken, but the scheduling was slightly different when it was broken up by conference, and the scheduling is now a little bit different. So to me, I hear what you're saying, but the questions that I had 2 years ago didn't get answered, and then I had those same exact questions last year, and now I have that same exact question, and now he's not with the team anymore. So for me, at a certain...
But I'm putting him 5th. You're acting like I'm putting him, in the top 3. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you, but, I just don't view this... I just don't think... For me, his coach... Like I said, I view it as a coaching... the coaching levels are done by a team and how dependent they are for their coaching. The Minnesota Lynx, would be still a top talent team, but they would not be in constant contention day in and day out if it was not for Cheryl. The Phoenix Mercury last season, perfect example of how dependent they are on great coaching. Connecticut Sun, I just think that.
I think this.
Yeah.
This season's going to tell us a lot because Amber Stocks, Poke Chapman, and Bill Laimbeer all have really highly, and even Dan Hughes, they all have and Fred Williams, they all have really talented rookies, and we'll kind of see which of those teams kind of takes a leap into that playoffs, and then we'll see what Nikki Collin and Katie Smith do. But like I said, I didn't consider Smith or Collin just because for me, I still have to wait and see. So again, that's not a knock on them. I'm not saying they're 6 through 12. I'm almost just saying I only considered 9 in my rankings. And then again, it ultimately comes down to then Tebow, Chapman, Laimbeer, Fred Williams. And I just feel like overall, Laimbeer's done enough in the past and recent present to get that slight nod.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight hard against that. I do have my own issues. Like for me, it's very much so like, are there coaches that at the end of a game, I'm going to immediately be like, let me think back to like questionable timeouts or not timeouts or questionable fouls / not fouls. And am I going to automatically kind of side with the coach without thinking about it too much? Or am I going to go, we got to look at this because I don't really trust this coach fully. For me, that kind of boiled down to what it was, is the top 5 are coaches that or I guess the top 4 very strongly, I say, like, I have full confidence in their call. And then there wasn't necessarily another coach who I felt that full confidence in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm curious why you left Tebow off the list. For me, he's almost right there with Laimbeer. Like I said, if I had to pick one, I'd just tie break it with the championships. I mean, he led the team with a lot of injuries to the semifinals. And, you know, I guess, well, why is he being left off your list? Because, again, you're talking about, do you trust a certain coach? And it's kind of like, you're giving the 5th spot to coaches that haven't been in that situation. I don't really think that's fair.
No, I agree with you. For me personally, it's a combination of things. You know, never that, like, he doesn't have a ring, and obviously I can only knock him so much for that because he's never had a team who's had the ability, like, had the likes of Elena Del Don before, right? But and maybe I'm knocking him too hard for the lack of a ring now that I think about it more. He was up there as, like, if we were going a top list, like a top 12 list, I would probably put him around the 6th spot or the 5 spot. For me, because it's been that length of time where they've kind of struggled to get past a point, I look at it, I'll almost make the comparison to how you look at bringing in a new player of, you know, after a while, if it hasn't been working, you know, bring in somebody new or like give somebody new a shot. So my number 5 was almost more of a giving them a shot, especially for someone like Katie. Obviously, everybody has talked about for a very long time about how she's ready for this, blah, 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 all that jazz. So, like, for me, it's much more of the number 5 spot. No one's solidified in my mind that they should be that spot. So I was going to give it to somebody and say, here's your chance, you know?
Yeah, I guess for me, if I was going to go with a newer coach, I would go with Amber Stocks just because, you know, she has a year under her belt. And I think that she again, Chicago had a very flawed roster, and they had a lot of, like, roster turnover. So I really don't look at the record last year to judge, but I think by midway through the season, that team started to figure some things out, and they led the league in assists. And I think when she gets the right personnel, that team, you're going to see how they move the ball and play a very modern style. And, you know, her ability to embrace analytics brings a lot of potential. So, you know, again, she's someone I, you know, would have maybe put there if not for the fact that we're kind of, again, it's just a little, for me, it's still just a little too early. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, yeah.
I think we're both kind of in agreement that there's, like, kind of a top 4 that we see, and that it's kind of, we're both being positive and not negative and saying the door's kind of open for someone to, like, break into that top 5 with their performance this year.
Definitely. I mean, the door's always open. Hey, come on in. It's Applebee's. But, like, like for any coach, it has to be like they make their team that much better. And again, we're being like you said, we're being positive, and we're not trying to knock on any coaches. Though it's kind of like, for instance, there's some teams in the league, how we spoke about with our power rankings with the teams. There's certain teams that, their play is just on that top tier, and some teams aren't there yet. Not to say that they don't have very talented rosters and they don't have the ability to get to that level, or to even next year when we're having this discussion, it could be completely different. Eli, we have a lot of exciting news that we're going to be releasing to the folks over the next few weeks. So we want to get everyone excited. One of the things we're going to be announcing as just a little sneak peek is going to be a 4-ticket giveaway to the home opener for the Dallas Wings, which I know you would love to win and get to see Azrae Stevens live. What is what's something that you're excited about for this coming season that you want to kind of give the folks an eye into?
Yeah, we're excited to announce that we're hiring a staff, and we're going to announce some of those hires later this week and early next week. We're bringing in a few beat reporters who are going to cover a couple teams each, and they're going to be live tweeting the games. They're going to be writing articles of news and analysis. You'll still hear from us. We're still going to be running the show on the pod, and we'll be covering some teams ourselves. But we're really opening up this community, and when you see who we're bringing in, I think you're going to be excited. We're bringing some well-trained journalists, people that have covered the NBA, people that have gone to very esteemed journalism schools, former Division I women's coaches. So I'm very excited to just really fully cover the league. I think we've done our best to give you guys a taste and cover it all by ourselves, but there's too many great players and stories for two people. So that's very exciting. And if you're listening, we actually have an application out. So maybe one of our listeners is a writer themselves.
Yeah. Hey, if you are, contact us. Contact Eli.h at WNBAinsidr.com. Again, the email is Eli.h at WNBAinsidr.com. Folks, we're really excited about all the stuff we got coming out for you guys. And so make sure, pay attention to all the different forms of social media, because we got exciting stuff coming through. And again, this has been Aryeh Schwartz along with Eli Horowitz, the WNBA Insider Show. Each week we cover different topics important to the W, key stats, X's and O's, and honest critical analysis. Thanks so much, and make sure to tune in